to Narayana IAS Academy. My name is Shubham Sagar, and in today's daily news analysis, that is DNA, we'll be talking about 5 articles taken from Hindu or Indian Express. If we talk about the first article of the day, which is on Indian Express page number 8, titled Law and Impunity. Here we try to understand the connection between Kolkata rape murder tragedy, Vishakha guidelines, and BNS, that is Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. And we'll try to understand whether Vishakha guidelines has failed us or we have failed Vishakha guidelines. If we talk about the second article of the day, which is on Indian Express page number 7, here we'll talk about orangutan diplomacy. Which country is involved in orangutan diplomacy? How it is different from panda diplomacy? What is the IUCN status of orangutans? How many types of orangutans are there? If we talk about the third article of the day, which is on Indian Express page number 8, here we'll try to understand our Honorable PM Narendra Modi sir visit to Ukraine and how it could impact India-Russia relationship and how India is trying to balance different axes. If we talk about the fourth article of the day, which is again on Indian Express page number 5, we have lots of important articles from Indian Express today. And here we'll try to understand Lokayukta. What is the concept of Lokayukta? What is Lokpal? Are they anti-corruption authority? If they are they doing their work properly? And here we'll be talking about Karnataka CM as well in this particular article. If we talk about the last article of the day, which is on Hindu page number 16, here we'll try to understand about a so-called new polio strain in Meghalaya. So, is it a new polio strain? But what about the eradication of polio program which we have done? India has already eradicated polio. So what is this new case all about? We'll try to understand this. Once we are done with these 5 articles, we'll try to solve 5 prelims practice question and 1 means practice question. Because as we have discussed earlier, practice makes a man as well as a woman perfect. So let's get started. If we talk about the first article of the day, Kolkata rape murder tragedy, and I was in Kolkata 1 or 2 days back. Protests are going on. So we'll talk about Kolkata rape murder tragedy and we'll try to connect this particular tragedy with Vishakha guidelines and Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, because Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, which has been brought now, and they talk about gender equality, they talk about gender justice per se. So we'll try to understand these terms. What do these terms mean and what are the criticism associated with BNS and whether it is actually fulfilling what it promised earlier. So what are the basic terms which are important here? Kolkata rape murder tragedy, Vishakha judgments, and if we talk about patriarchal setup and how India is, like most of the parts of India, most of the states of India follow this patriarchal mindset. We'll talk about that, and these kind of questions have been asked in UPSC mains earlier. So what is the context here? The horrific rape and murder of resident doctor at RG Kar Medical College in Calcutta, or Kolkata rather, it raised certain questions that if we are not safe at our workplace, where are we actually safe? And that led to the case being transferred to CBI by Calcutta High Court. Now, here there are different things. Like if you talk about representation of women in political sphere or legal sphere or social sphere, you will see there is like a very small amount of percentage of women in different spheres, be it political, legal or social order, and that allows a high threshold of sexual violence, reflecting deep-seated sexual impunity. Because men are at the level of power, be it political power or legal power or social power, because of higher representation, that also promotes to a certain extent the degree of sexual violence is comparatively more. So Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, to address all these issues or most of these issues, and to promote the concept of gender justice per se rather, the BNS was brought up, and we'll talk about Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, we'll talk about Vishakha guidelines, but the BNS has failed to create a culture of deterrence against sexual crimes, and we'll try to see the criticism associated with BNS as well. So Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, it is a criminal code replacing IPC, Indian Penal Code, which was enacted in 1860, because many people believe that IPC represents colonial era, or it is a representation of colonial legacy. Now here, important things from UPSC pre and mains perspective. When was this Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, or when did it come into effect? So 1st July 2024, although it was passed in December 2023 itself. And then why this particular BNS was needed? They were saying that the most important thing is enhancement of gender justice per se. This includes restructuring the code to prioritize crimes against women. Death penalty was also introduced for crime against women. So under the BNS, crimes like rape and sexual assault are moved to the forefront of the penal code. So in the initial pages only, you will see crimes related to rape or crimes like rape and sexual assault, what are the charges associated with them. So they were brought to the forefront rather than being on the last pages of any particular penal code. And there will be the criticism also. Just by restructuring this all legal codes, you will not change the status of women in India. That is what is one of the criticism. Just you are bringing this rape and sexual assault charges to the forefront doesn't mean the condition of women will improve drastically all of a sudden. That will not happen. So many things have to be changed at the ground level. So critics, now here there is a criticism, or there are criticism associated with BNS. Critics argue that merely renumbering the sections of penal code just by placing rape and all these charges above or in the initial pages will not or does not lead to real change in terms of creating a culture of deterrence or ensuring justice for victims. We need changes at the ground level. Society has to look inside. Society has to see. Ethics has to be promoted. And all these things cannot be done just by renumbering the sections of penal code. There are concerns that such changes are more cosmetic than substantive. Whatever has been done, renumbering is more cosmetic according to the author of the article. Now let's talk more about this particular news. So workplace sexual harassment. This particular case, Kolkata rape murder tragedy, is also an example of workplace sexual harassment, extreme form of workplace sexual harassment which led to death. So again, this author is saying that the transfer of redressal processes for sexual harassment to employers contradicts the Vishakha judgment. We'll talk about Vishakha guidelines. What are these guidelines? It led to passage of a particular act in 2013. What was that act called? All these things we'll talk about. But here they are saying that if you are giving the redressal process to the employers itself related to sexual harassment, that is contradicting, because employers have vested interest in not addressing such issues because that can malign the name of a particular company. So state funding priorities. Again, in this particular point, the author is talking about that state is investing in CCTV biometrics, but how much state is investing in concepts like safe spaces like shelter homes? That shows where our interest lies, or where the priorities of states lies. We need more shelter homes to protect such vulnerable women who have been sexually harassed in the past. So priorities have to be set straight, and states have to see whether their priorities are in actual order or not. So now let's talk about Vishakha guidelines. So BNS, Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, we read something about BNS. Now let's try to understand the basic core objective of Vishakha guidelines. So it is a set of procedural guidelines established by Supreme Court in 1997 to address sexual harassment at workplace. And these guidelines were named after Vishakha Group. What is a Vishakha Group, or what is the Vishakha Group? It is a women's rights organization that was one of the petitioner. What was that case? We'll talk about it. These Vishakha guidelines led to the passage of an act called Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act 2013. Please remember this. Sometimes people just write Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act. Don't do that, because then the core objective is nullified. You have to write Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal. And why this Vishakha guidelines came? There was a whole case related to the gang rape of Bhavri Devi. And Bhavri Devi was a social worker from Rajasthan who was targeted for attempting to prevent a child marriage. And that led to talk about sexual harassment in the workplace, how safe women are in like different workspaces. And that's what has happened again now because of this Kolkata rape murder tragedy. Many people say that this is Nirbhaya 2.0. Many people say that these kind of things happen even inside girls' homes as well, because there are different reports that 95% of all the sexual assault cases related to children are done by the relatives of the children. So what does it mean? You cannot trust anyone. You have to trust yourself only. And means children and all the other people also, they have to be taught about good touch and bad touch. All these things have to be done at the ground level. Only renumbering legal codes of BNS or talking about Vishakha guidelines will not address the issue. Plus, Vishakha guidelines provisions where they're talking about that if you are talking about sexual processes, then like in the previous slide only, we talked about that redressal process we are shifting to employers. That has to be changed. That was not what was stated by Vishakha guidelines. So if we are implementing provisions of Vishakha guidelines, it has to be implemented in entirety. So what is the conclusion here? The article underscores the deep-rooted systemic failures in addressing sexual violence and gender-based injustices in India. So we need to have proper education about good touch, bad touch. All these things have to be taught at the basic level. If Vishakha guidelines are implemented, if the Sexual Harassment Act, Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act has been passed, it has to be implemented in entirety. Despite legislative efforts like Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, the entrenched culture of sexual impunity persists, revealing a troubling disconnect between legal reforms and their real-world impact on victims. Proper implementation of these legal reforms and changes at the ground level are needed if you don't want to see Nirbhaya 3.0 again. This Kolkata rape murder tragedy has been equated to Nirbhaya 2.0. Hope, we pray for that poor soul and hope this particular thing is not repeated ever again. If you talk about the second article of the day, orangutan diplomacy. The point here is orangutan diplomacy, panda diplomacy. What are these diplomacy? And here environmental conservation, flora, fauna conservation, all these things are in use. But it is also important from international relation perspective because a country is involved in this particular diplomacy, just like China was involved in panda diplomacy. So what are the things which are important from exam perspective? What is this diplomacy rather all about? Which country is involved here? What is the IUCN status of orangutan? How many different kind of species of orangutan we are talking about here? Are they having the same IUCN status? So all these things are important from exam perspective. What are the criticism associated with this particular orangutan diplomacy? So previous year question related to IUCN Red Data Book, they have been asked, and we should be ready for these kind of questions in future as well. So what is the context here? Malaysia's Plantation and Commodities Minister Johari Ghani initially proposed sending critically endangered orangutans. There are 3 types of orangutans, we'll talk about them, and all of them are critically endangered on the IUCN list. And what they are saying is, if you're buying palm oil from us, we'll be gifting you orangutans. But then this was criticized. And environmentalists were like, in which country you are sending them? Whether the conservation status or whether they will be protected to a greater degree or not, those things are in question here. Just like when cheetahs were transferred from Africa to India, not many survived. So you have to look at the conservation status, which kind of policies the government will be adopting, where it will be sent. So again, there were lots of criticism which happened in Malaysia because of this. On August 18, Johari Ghani revised the proposal after facing criticism. Instead of gifting orangutans, they are saying that if you're buying, let's say, if you're importing palm oil from us, you'll be sending money and that can be used to sponsor orangutans. So we'll be preserving them in our own country, that is Malaysia. So do remember the terms here. This particular orangutan diplomacy associated with Malaysia, panda diplomacy associated with China. So orangutans in Malaysia. Now, about orangutans, they are highly intelligent great apes native to rainforest of Southeast Asia in the islands or on the islands of Borneo and Sumatra. Now, a question for you. Like I keep on telling you people that at the end, when we are done with the 5 articles, you have to solve 5 prelims practice questions. And whatever you are getting correct, let's say 2 out of 5, 1 out of 5, 3 out of 5, please post it in the comment section. Similarly, there's a question for you. Borneo and Sumatra Islands, they are under the jurisdiction of which country or countries? Is it under Malaysia? Is it under Indonesia? Is it under Brunei? All 3 of them? None of them? Please post in the comment section if you know the answer. So orangutans are the only great apes found in Asia, because if you talk about other apes like African chimpanzees, bonobos and gorillas, they are found in Africa, even bonobos and gorillas. Now there are 3 species: Bornean orangutan, Sumatran and Tapanuli. All of them are critically endangered and they are found on different islands, like Bornean, as the name suggests, Borneo Island. Sumatran, Sumatra, and Tapanuli found in Sumatra but in distinct isolated population. So keep a note of these terms. They can be asked in the subsequent prelims practice question. About orangutans, we're talking all 3 species critically endangered due to habitat loss. And when we're talking about panda diplomacy, panda, China, what is the IUCN status of great panda? If you know this, please post in the comment section. Population of orangutan has dramatically declined over the past few decades because of illegal logging, deforestation for palm oil plantation and poaching. All these are the reasons. Now let's talk more about this news. So we were talking about that orangutan diplomacy, how it was like the whole thing was changed. Why this particular orangutan diplomacy was revised? Because animal welfare groups, they criticized the original plan, calling it obscene and repugnant. And they argued that it was hypocritical to destroy. So you were destroying orangutan habitats. Why you were gifting? What was the basic gist behind it? Because you wanted to grow more and more palm oil. Because of this, you needed areas, and those areas were the habitats of orangutans. So you, in a way, when you are saying you are gifting, so you are clearing space for yourself to grow more and more palm oil. So destroying orangutan habitats for palm oil production, this is not at all like environmentally sound initiative, while using the animals as diplomatic tools. So Malaysia, again there is a question here. Malaysia is world's 2nd largest palm oil producer. So the question can arise in your mind that which country is the largest palm oil producer. Is it Indonesia, is it Brunei or some other country? Please post in the comment section. And Malaysia has been under pressure to make its palm oil industry more sustainable, especially in the light of European Union's ban on goods linked to deforestation. So all these things are happening in the background and you are understanding the whole gist behind this particular orangutan diplomacy. The palm oil industry has been linked to deforestation, which has resulted in habitat loss for orangutans, and maybe that's why they were gifting, or they thought about gifting orangutans, contributing to their endangered and critically endangered status. Orangutans are native to the rainforest of Borneo and Sumatra. We have discussed this earlier. 3 species of orangutans, and this region is shared. I asked this question to you earlier. Shared by Malaysia, Indonesia and Brunei. So what is the conclusion here? Critics pointed out that unlike China's panda diplomacy, which included or includes advanced facilities and protected areas for pandas, Malaysia's proposal faced or lacked comparable efforts to protect wild orangutan populations. And under the revised scheme, Malaysia plans to collaborate with experts to monitor the presence, safety and condition of wild orangutans as part of its conservation programs. Because we now know that they will not be gifting. They will just be taking the money which they will be getting from the export of import like palm oil, which other countries will be buying, and then that money will be used to sponsor the preservation, the conservation of orangutans. If we talk about the third article of the day, Indian Prime Minister Modi sir has visited Ukraine. So what is happening? Has India's ties with Russia been affected to a certain extent, or is India trying to balance different relations? So we'll try to talk about this particular issue. And from exam perspective, what are the things which are important? Ukraine is in news. So the neighboring countries of Ukraine, which of the following countries border Ukraine? These kind of questions can be asked in prelims. So we should be aware about Ukraine. You should be aware about A to Z things related to Ukraine, especially the things which are in news. So previous year questions related to, in mains actually, what introduced or introduces friction into the ties between India and US, like currently, I think 2-3 years back in the DNA, we talked about how India and US is currently fighting over dual-use goods because those dual-use goods can be exported to Russia by India. So all these things, there are different areas of friction. These kind of questions have been asked by UPSC mains, and we should be ready for pre also, especially the places which are in news, PIN. So PM Modi's visit to Kyiv marks a significant shift in India's foreign policy towards Central Europe amidst the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. The visit comes in the context of prolonged conflict between Russia and Ukraine, which started from Crimea annexation in 2014. Crimea initially belonged to Ukraine, Russia annexed it, and then it escalated into a full-scale invasion in 2022. So what is India doing? Just like India has dehyphenated its relationship between Israel and Palestine, same kind of dehyphenation is being done, according to the author of the article, between Russia and Central Europe. So this Ukraine is a part of Central European countries. And that's how we are trying to seek a more balanced global role here. Non-alignment has always been our policy, or in a way, we are trying to implement that policy now as well. So if you see this, Ukraine is a part of Central Europe, because if you see the Eastern Europe part will be comprising, because Russia is a transcontinental country. So major portion of Russian Federation, the western side of Russian country, that is like the, again, please understand this, it is Eastern Europe, this is Central Europe, and then the other countries like Germany, etc. will be part of Western Europe. So Ukraine, Central Europe, pay proper attention to this map. This is very important. You have to look at Ukraine just like you look at your better half. So Ukraine, what are the countries which are bordering Ukraine? Please pay attention. Whether Bulgaria is bordering Ukraine or not, Russia is bordering Belarus, which particular country? These kind of questions can be asked. So change in Indian foreign policy with respect to Central Europe. Strategic recalibration. India is shifting from a historically Russia-centric approach to a more diversified engagement with Central Europe. Because as our Prime Minister Modi sir says, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, and we want to implement it at the global level also. So that means we want to take everyone. Like, we don't want to be like seen at one side or the other. We are trying to follow the earlier policy of non-aligned movement, that is NAM. Increase engagement. By deepening ties with Ukraine, India is asserting a more active role in European geopolitics independent of its relationship with Russia. Time and again, it has been said that Russia is an all-weather friend of ours. Unlike US, which sometimes during the time of Trump era, we had a transactional relationship, quid pro quo. But even then, even if Russia is an all-weather friend, we should be keeping our options open. Because it is said that in international relations, nobody is a friend or like an enemy. It's all depends upon opportunities and how you are tackling different crises or challenges. So strategic autonomy, that is also being reflected when we are visiting Ukraine. The change aligns with India's broader strategy of strategic autonomy, allowing it to engage with multiple global powers and regions without being bound by traditional alliances. So India-Russia relationship is fine, but we are free to follow other relationships as well. Opportunities in Central Europe. Engagement with Central Europe offers India opportunities for economic, technological, and defense cooperation, enhancing its global standing. Now here, Ukraine places Kyiv, Odessa, Crimea. Please pay attention to these reasons also, apart from the countries which border Ukraine. Now, potential implications on ties with Russia. Perception of shift. Russia may view India's increased engagement with Ukraine as a shift away from traditionally close India-Russia relationship. Balancing act. India must carefully balance its evolving ties with Central Europe while maintaining its strategic partnership with Russia, particularly in defense and energy sector. Now, that will be a key challenge for us. How we are balancing this India-Ukraine and India-Russia ties, especially in Central Europe as well. So transactional relationship. India-Russia relationship could become more transactional, focusing on mutual interest while managing differences over issues like Ukraine. Just like we have somewhat of a transactional relationship with US, which we have discussed, especially during the Trump era. Complex diplomacy. India will need to navigate complex diplomatic terrain, ensuring that its new engagements do not compromise its long-standing ties with Russia while also reinforcing its strategic autonomy. Even Russia-Pakistan relationship is booming. Some political experts were saying that Russia has even given certain weapons to Pakistan. So when Russia and Pakistan can have relationship, why India and Ukraine cannot do the same? So all these kind of questions have been asked by different political experts, and we will see how this whole thing pans out in future. If we talk about the fourth article of the day, so there is a case related to Karnataka CM and there are certain corruption charges. All these are like local news related to Karnataka. More important for us in this particular article is the term Lokayukta, Lokpal. These are anti-corruption officials, ombudsmen. Lokpal, Lokayukta, they have been also discussed in second ARC report, first ARC report, Administrative Reforms Commission report. And like when we talk about CM, whether he is involved in some corruption charges or not, who will look into that? PM, Prime Minister, whether he is involved in some corruption charges or not, who will look into that? To address these issues, the concept of Lokayukta and Lokpal came into existence. Mainly, many people believe, many political experts believe that this whole concept is of Scandinavian origin. And again, there's a question for you people, if you know this. There are Scandinavian countries, there are Nordic countries. What is the difference between Scandinavian and Nordic countries? Which countries are part of Scandinavian countries or are part of Scandinavian countries, and which are Nordic countries? Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, all these are the countries which are in question here. So, previous question related to Lokpal has been asked in 2013. A national Lokpal, however strong it may be, cannot resolve the problems of immorality in public spheres. So now let's talk about the public spheres or public affairs. So context here, the article discusses a legal controversy involving former Karnataka CM H.D. Kumaraswamy. Allegations of mining lease, etc. has been like leveled against former CM Kumaraswamy. But the main important part here is who is leveling these allegations? Lokayukta. And how Lokayukta is different from Lokpal. Does CM comes under the jurisdiction of Lokayukta? Does PM come under the jurisdiction of Lokpal? All these are questions which we need to understand. So special investigation team of Karnataka Lokayukta is leading the investigation. Now let's understand Lokayukta. Lokayukta is anti-corruption authority or ombudsman at the state level. Lokpal is anti-corruption authority at the central level. Anna Hazare, you must have heard about him. He was the one who was leading the movement that we need Lokpal, addressing complaints of corruption and maladministration raised by the public. An ombudsman is typically seen as an individual appointed to safeguard citizens against any form of maladministration. Corruption is a huge issue in India according to second ARC. And we have discussed this. I have discussed this in previous DNA videos that corruption is a exception rather than a norm in most of the countries. But in India, corruption is a norm rather than an exception. I am not saying this statement. Who is saying or who are saying these statements? Or who is saying rather these statements is second ARC, Second Administrative Reforms Commission. They have a report which is known as Ethics and Governance Report. They are saying this. In India, corruption is a norm rather than an exception. In most of the countries of the world, corruption is an exception rather than a norm. So Lokpal and Lokayukta Act 2013 establishes Lokpal at the central level and Lokayukta at the state level to investigate corruption allegations against public officials and related matters, right? So even before the act was passed, several states in India had already established Lokayuktas at the state level. Now here, what are the needs? You can also make a chart or make a diagram like this in exam where you can show via like diagrammatic representation, flowcharts, etc. So citizen empowerment is done because then citizen will feel more attached to the government because they know maladministrations and corruption will be taken care of by Lokayukta. Overlap of functions in existing agencies to ensure public trust in the public means system and to tackle the menace of corruption, which is a norm rather than an exception in our country. Evolution of Lokayukta. 1809, origin of Lokayukta can be traced to ombudsmen in Scandinavian countries. I have given you a homework. If you know the answer, please post in the comment section what is the difference between Scandinavian countries and Nordic countries. Denmark is a part of what? Norway, Sweden, Finland, all these countries are involved. So Sweden was the first country to have the institution of ombudsman in the year 1809. 1962. Inspired by this ombudsman system in Scandinavian countries, M.C. Setalwar, India's first Attorney General. Again, question for you. Attorney General, is it a constitutional body, statutory body? Which kind of body it is? If you know the answer, please post in the comment section. First mooted the idea of Indian ombudsman in 1962. And then the term Lokpal and Lokayukta was coined by Dr. L.M. Singhvi. Now you must have heard about a name called Abhishek Manu Singhvi. He is associated with L.M. Singhvi. Who is Abhishek Manu Singhvi? If you know this, again you can post in the comment section. 1966, Morarji Desai led the first ARC, Administrative Reforms Commission, which recommended two-tier machinery. Lokpal at the center to look into the corruption charges against the Council of Ministers at the center and Lokayukta at the state level. 1968, Lokpal bill was passed in Lok Sabha, lapsed. Until 2011, all these things were in limbo because nobody wanted, like, center government. Why would they want that? There should be a Lokpal which will look into the corruption charges against them. No, everybody wants to be above the law. And each central government was trying to do the same with due respect to all of them. So 1972, the state of Maharashtra created the institution of Lokayukta, and then followed by Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh and Karnataka. 2013, Anna Hazare, India Against Corruption movement, because of which there was a pressure on the UPA government, and finally this Lokpal and Lokayukta Act 2013 was passed. And this act was eventually enforced on 1st January 2014. The efficacy of this particular act, how much it has been implemented, whether PM is under the jurisdiction or not, all these things are up for debate. But yes, it has been passed. Now let's talk about the office of Lokayukta. More than the Lokpal, we are interested in Lokayukta because this article is hovering around Lokayukta. So again, there is no uniform structure of Lokayukta at all states. Structure of Lokayukta does not follow a uniform pattern. Some states have both Lokayukta and below him Up-Lokayukta. Other states have only Lokayukta. In most states, Lokayukta and Up-Lokayukta are appointed by governor. Governor consults Chief Justice of High Court, Leader of Opposition. Again, remember, this is not a uniform thing. Qualification, judicial qualifications are required for Lokayukta in some states like UP, Himachal and others. No specific qualifications in Bihar and Rajasthan. Lokayukta term, 70 years or 5 years, whatever comes earlier. 70 years of age or 5 years, term of 5 years. Lokayukta is not eligible for reappointment for a second term. Keep these points in mind, they can be asked. There is no uniformity in the jurisdiction. What area they are covering, how much power they have, all these things vary from state to state, and that's what they have written. Chief Minister is within Lokayukta's jurisdiction in states like Himachal, Andhra, Madhya Pradesh, but they are excluded, and others, but they are excluded in UP, Rajasthan and Bihar. So again, you can see uniformity is not there. Many political experts believe that there should be uniformity, and that's what this particular box is saying. Office of Lokayukta, powers, supervisory power, power of search and seizure, ability to utilize the services of state government officers. Again, it is not uniform, but yes, in some states they have ample power, like Karnataka. Functions, accepts complaint against accused individuals or groups, providing them a chance to defend themselves. Conducts fair and impartial investigations, among other functions. So please understand, Lokpal, Lokayukta, Ombudsman, Scandinavian countries, who coined the term, Singhvi, all these points are very important. And the major debate here, when we are talking about Lokpal and Lokayukta, is whether PM should be under the jurisdiction of Lokpal or not. And all these things will unfold in future, and we'll try to understand, or we'll try to talk more about Lokpal in the subsequent DNA videos as well. If we talk about the last article of the day, WHO investigating suspected new polio strain in Meghalaya. So polio has been eradicated in India. What is this new polio strain? We'll talk about it. And different types of vaccine for polio, we'll talk about it. Which vaccine can cause polio, we'll talk about it. So all these are important terms associated. And viruses, questions on virus has been asked earlier in like UPSC CSE 2019 and in other prelims as well. So context, vaccine-derived polio virus. What is this VDPV? You will be understanding it once we are done with this article. Is a rare but significant public health concern that emerges when the weakened strain of polio virus used in oral polio vaccine. So there are two kinds of vaccine in simple terms. One which is injected, the other one which is given orally. This OPV, which is given orally, it has there is a chance that it can mutate and it can cause paralytic disease in some individuals. So that has happened in Meghalaya, where a 2-year-old child was diagnosed with acute flaccid paralysis. Don't worry about these technical terms, just understand because of OPV. What are the two different or basic terms of vaccines? Polio vaccine, one which you take orally, other which is injected to you. The one which is injected to you is more safe compared to the one which you take orally. But orally, the oral polio vaccine is much easier to give to you and it does not require too much technical knowledge from the people who is giving it to you. But when we talk about the vaccine which is given or injected to you, that is much more difficult to make. That is much more there are so many complications associated with that, but it is safer. So we'll talk about that. So recent case, paralysis case, due to vaccine-derived polio. You have taken a vaccine because of which you can get polio, and that is mainly associated with oral polio vaccine. Highlights the ongoing challenges in polio eradication efforts even after significant global progress. Hope you are understanding it. You will be understanding more once we are done with this article. So polio virus, if we talk about, there are 3 distinct serotypes. One, wild polio virus type 1. This is the one which is still prevalent. This WPV2, WPV3 has been eradicated. The most prevalent strain currently and the primary target is in ongoing eradication efforts. Still endemic in countries like Afghanistan and Pakistan. Whereas WPV2, that is wild polio virus type 2 and type 3, they have been eradicated globally in 2015 and 2019. So although these wild strains have largely been eradicated, vaccine-derived polio viruses, the case which we have discussed in Meghalaya, particularly those arising from oral polio vaccine. Which kind of polio vaccines are there? One which is given orally, the second one which is injected. Injected one is more safer. So that's what we are talking about. 2 main types of vaccine. First, inactivated polio vaccine, which is injected and developed by Jonas Salk. Remember the names. These are factual points. You should be remembering the name. Inactivated virus, as the name suggests, administered via injection. It is considered safer, we have discussed this, as this does not carry the risk of vaccine-derived polio virus associated with oral polio vaccines. Fine. But we have discussed that this is more difficult to produce and requires trained healthcare professionals for administration, and that's why you get or you see more examples of oral polio vaccines. So oral polio vaccines developed by Albert Sabine. So OPV contains a live attenuated virus and is administered orally. It has been vital in mass immunization due to its ease of use and low cost. However, in rare cases, the virus can mutate, as we have seen the case of Meghalaya, and revert to a form capable of causing paralysis, leading to VDPV outbreaks, especially with type 2 polio virus. To address this, the global health community introduced a genetically modified type 2 novel oral polio vaccine in 2021. So we are trying to reduce this vaccine-derived poliovirus, because of which this NOPV2 has been introduced in 2021, which is less likely to revert to a virulent form. So polio eradication initiatives, India has been given the status of polio-free country in 2014. And in this, when we got this, the reasons were many. This pulse polio immunization program played an instrumental role. Why? India was declared polio-free in 2014. When was this launched? 1995. And what was the aim? To vaccinate all children under 5 with the oral polio vaccine. Again, this can cause polio, vaccine-derived polio virus during national immunization days. The program achieved high coverage rates, often exceeding 95%. The second, our surveillance and monitoring we done. We tracked cases. Then we introduced inactivated polio vaccine, which is much safer. In 2015, as part of Global Polio Eradication Initiative Endgame Strategy, India introduced IPV into its routine immunization schedule. A schedule, IPV, provides immunity against all 3 polio virus types without the risk of vaccine-derived polio virus. So hope you understood this, and that thing will be eased in your mind. Vaccines, 2 types, oral and the one which is injected. Injected is much safer, but that is more technical and much more difficult to make. But now we are again focusing towards more IPV rather than OPV. So we have done 5 articles now. Let's solve 5 prelims practice question and 1 mains practice question. And I have told you earlier also in the previous DNA videos, I will keep on telling it that whatever marks you're getting out of 5, whatever questions you're getting correct, please post in the comment section 2 out of 5, 3 out of 5, 1 out of 5. Now let's see the first question. So question related to polio virus. We have just talked about it. Wild polio virus type, and just pause me and see the statements. Tricky question, good question. Even if you're getting it wrong, don't worry about it. So wild polio virus still endemic. We have talked about this. WPV1 is still endemic. PV2 and PV3 has been eradicated. So first is correct. Eliminate B option. Inactivated polio virus contains a live. No, it contains inactivated virus. That's why it is name inactivated. It does not contain live. Live as in means oral polio vaccine. So second is wrong. Just eliminate second. You're left with A and C. That is third. You have to check. Oral polio vaccine is vital in mass immunization. This is correct. General statement due to its ease of use. We have talked about this. So the answer is C, 1 and 3 only. Tricky question. Even if you're getting it wrong, don't worry about it. Countries which share a border with Ukraine. We have seen the map. We have seen the map like nobody has seen it before. So select the answer. So you have to eliminate the country which does not share a border. Russia does share a border. That's why they are fighting, right? So just eliminate option which does not contain Russia. ABC, you're left with Bulgaria. If you again go back and see the map, it was not sharing border with Ukraine. So you can eliminate 5. If you eliminate 5, you're directly getting the answer. That is A, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Third question, Lokayukta office. Governor must consult the leader of opposition in the state legislative assembly while appointing the Lokayukta. Not eligible for reappointment. Can only be removed by passing an impeachment motion. Again, a tricky question. Even if you're getting it wrong, don't worry about it. Go back and read the slides associated with Lokayukta again. All the 3 statements are correct. Although the policies are not uniform, but wherever it is there, these are the policies which are actually followed. Or these are the different criteria associated with Lokayukta appointment. Fourth question, orangutans are the only great apes native to Asia, 3 species, all of which are found on the island of Sumatra. Whenever these kind of statements are there, all, etc., extreme statements, you have to be very wary. So second statement is wrong. Not all are found in Sumatra. So second, just eliminate second. You're getting the answer. That is B, 1 and 3. Even if you don't know anything about 1 and 3, just by seeing this all word or all term, which is extreme in nature, you can get the answer. That is B, 1 and 3 only. Fifth question. Long question, but not necessarily a tough question related to sexual violence. Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita replaced Indian Penal Code. Correct statement. Just eliminate statement which does not have 1. Vishaka guidelines established by Supreme Court and later codified, etc., etc. Again, second statement is also correct. So just eliminate C. You're left with A and D. Transfer of redressal process for workplace sexual harassment to employers. It does not align. That's what we have discussed. When you are giving this redressal processes to employer, they don't have much incentive. They will try to shield the matter as much as possible to prevent the company's name from maligning. So third is wrong. It does not align with the principles set out in Vishaka guidelines. So the answer here is A, 1 and 2 only. Then means practice question. Despite the introduction of Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita aimed at enhancing gender justice, the persistent culture of sexual impunity in India raises question about the effectiveness of legislative reforms in addressing sexual violence. We need changes at the lower level. We need changes at the ground. We need lessons. We need to know about good touch and bad touch. All these things have to be done. We need proper implementation of Vishaka guidelines. Only reordering the penal codes in Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita will not do. All these things you have to talk about here. So, introduction, briefly introduce the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita because the question is related to that, how it is replacing IPC. Mention the persistent issue of sexual impunity despite these reforms. Systemic challenges, deep-rooted societal norms, patriarchy, how most of the ladders, political ladder, social ladder is being led by men. Representation of women is very low. Even when we talk about reservation in Lok Sabha, etc., how women reservation bill is still in limbo, or if it is implemented, the constitutional amendment has been done, but when will it be implemented? All these things are questions. So there are so many challenges. While legal changes like the introduction of BNS may fail to create a deterrent effect without addressing these underlying issues. Highlighting the limitation of BNS such as its potentially cosmetic changes. We have talked about it. Just reordering legal courts will not do. Workplace sexual harassment. Then we have talked about Vishaka guidelines 1997 passed into an act. But again, is it implemented in entirety, letter and spirit? That is a question which we have to ask. So again, that has been written here. All these things you have to discuss. And the conclusion is the key points emphasizing the need for a holistic approach. If we are implementing certain guidelines and acts, we have to implement it in entirety. And again, HIMA committee report has also been released some days back. They are also talking about how things need to change at the ground level. And we have to strengthen, like we have to do certain things to see whether these laws are implemented in letter and spirit. Better implementation, awareness and support system for victims, where state is investing. On CCTVs or shelter homes, we have talked about this and how those things need to change. So that's it for today's DNA video, that is daily news analysis video. If you like this particular video, do like, share and subscribe, and please post how many questions out of 5 of the prelims practice question you got right. So take care, be blessed, see you again.